Welcome to the Idea Industry Podcast. I'm your host, Mr.Yyetti, and this is a continuation of the conversation from last episode with Mr. Kenton Low. If you haven't seen the first episode, I highly recommend that you go back over there. It's a fantastic episode, and of course, I hope you enjoy.
So, years ago, Victor, before you were born, I worked in household cleaning products. And one of my household cleaning products that I worked on was drain openers. And so there were really only two competitors in the marketplace. One was named Drano, and the other one was named Liquid Plumber. And those are the two, number one and number two. Liquid Plumber was always number two. And Drano was the market leader, and we kind of followed them in everything that they did. And so, for example, in July, they took a price increase. We would take a price increase. Yeah. And basically, if they did a promotion on a certain size, we do a promotion on a certain size to follow them. Then we did some research, and the research indicated that at the end of the day, if somebody's got a clogged drain, they just want that clog to be cleared.
Yeah.
And so, pricing is not that big a deal. So that's why our competitor and us kept raising the price every year because, people don't really care. They just need to. But then we thought that, well, what if we didn't raise the price? Would that actually make a difference? And so I built a mathematical model based on what I had learned in university. I built a mathematical model that predicted what would happen if we didn't raise the price. And I remember presenting it to management, and they said, "Oh, okay, we have no clue what you're talking about." But basically, this analysis that you've done seems to looks interesting. So let's give it a try and not increase the price, because you're saying it could make a difference. And it did. And our competition didn't even notice that we didn't raise the price. So for several months later, our market share started to go up and then suddenly surpass the competition. And next thing you know, after 7 years of being the number two player, we were now the number one player. But that was due to analysis.
I think so many of us in business, at least here at TRSM, right? Mm-hmm. We start as just business management students, and then after our first year, or is it our second year? We decide okay, well, do I want to go into economics, marketing,
finance?
Well, finance is a different sector entirely. They had to separate them. Yeah, because they're doing something crazy down there. Okay. So global management, it was finance, everyone else, right? So at second year, we have to kind of decide. But for a lot of people, they go in and they don't like doing the math, and it's I just have business ideas. I have these great ideas that I want to start working on, or I feel if I was in a company, I'd be able to start, just giving them strategies and stuff like that, right? And it was a big eye opener for me when you talked about how much analysis and math played a role inside of your career. Do you feel now that you're at the dean level and you oversee a lot of students on the overall education for them, have you seen that resistance to mathematics and statistics and so on? How is it at BCIT?
So our school is probably like many schools where marketing students do not have an affinity for math. They see more the creative side of marketing. Yeah, and so that's fine. Somebody can build a truly fulfilling career that tends to be more in the creative side of marketing. And there are those that build a career on the quantitative side of marketing, where they like to do analysis. they get more into like data science and marketing research and all that. But then there are
Yeah.
those that have learned both sides. I've tend to say, like over the years, people that rise to the top of an organization tend to be very well versed on both left brain, right brain capabilities.
Hmm.
So I try to tell my students too that, okay, just depends on what you want to do with your career. And if somebody says, well, I want to be like a vice president or CEO someday, I say, well, you need to have a pretty good command of both the qualitative and the quantitative side.
Yeah. It really made all the difference for me. And I think more students need it. And I feel like it's not even that like we don't have an affinity for it. It's just like you spend, at least I know for like me and the high schoolers that I grew up with, a lot of us were just like counting the days down of like how long we'd have to do mathematics. And it's like, oh my goodness, I'm almost out of here, right? But it's like, yeah, you just change your outlook on it. It's like I could figure out a statistical, mathematical model that all of a sudden makes my company number one in the market, right? That's a fantastic feeling. And once it's like more about that, then it's like, oh yeah, I'll learn the math. Sure, I like money.
No, it was the same for me because even when I was in university, I was taking the quantitative courses, finding them interesting. But it was a marketing research professor that really turned me on to advanced analytics and the power of advanced analytics because we were building predictive models. Because I became fascinated in how do I predict future sales?
Mm.
And I learned techniques like multivariate regression analysis that ultimately enabled me to build mathematical models to predict the future based on uh, independent variables that would impact what you would do. And I just found that fascinating and started using it in my career. But I remember the professor said academia is up to 15 years ahead of the real world. So it's going to be your job to introduce this type
Mm.
of activity. And I remember when I was introducing that mathematical model I built on drain openers, I remember watching the eyes roll or the eyes glaze over of senior leaders that said, okay, we don't know what he's talking about, but maybe he's on to something here.
Yeah.
And so sure enough, it was. I did it and I got promoted.
That's fantastic. That's awesome. Oh, I could talk about this for years. I always have like starry eyes every time you talk about like your mathematical career. I'm like, wow, that's
Yeah.
fantastic.
And I'm a marketer. So,
And you're a marketer, exact. It's like the whole blueprint right in front of me. So, what would you say then are some pitfalls that you often see business professionals and students fall into when it comes to business decision making, ideation, those
okay.
areas?
Uh, uh, it's finding the right balance of marketing research. So some organizations, some business professionals, some students as well too, don't do enough research.
Mm-hmm.
So on the one hand, we've been talking about analysis paralysis. On the other hand, there's also, well, did you do 80 research or is this based on you just pulled this out of this, wherever, and decided this is a great idea. So some degree of research is necessary to
Yeah.
understand the market, understand the competition, understand the consumer, the customer. So the pitfalls are some don't do enough research at all. Um, another another area is uh, in building the financial models, like underestimating how much it's really going to cost to build
Mm.
this product. Some people just think, this is good enough, but uh, they either are not capable themselves or they haven't surrounded themselves with people that really understand how to build like a financial forecast as to what this
Yeah.
business could be. Um, Another pitfall would be ignoring trends. Like if the trends are going this way and you think that the opportunity is this way, well, you could either be super right or super wrong.
Yeah.
So you do have to like look to see where the trends are in the marketplace. Certainly, there's always going to be people that will come up with an idea that the trends don't indicate it whatsoever. That would be
Yeah.
somebody like Steve Jobs, that
Yeah.
just looks at, we're going to launch this, and basically, it's because the world doesn't know what they really need. Like, here's a good
Hmm.
example. If years and years ago somebody said, "Hey, I got a great idea. How about if people walk up to the side of the wall on a bank and they're able to get money out of the side of the wall of a bank?" Right? People are going to say, "Okay, who's this idiot?" Uh, of course,
Yeah.
we all know ATMs are part of daily life.
Yeah.
But so sometimes there's no research that's going to tell. But actually, let me take that back. There would be research if you're asking the right questions. And the
Mm.
right questions would be finding out that it's extremely inconvenient for people if banks are only open from like 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. and then everybody can only go to a bank during lunchtime.
Yeah.
And then the lines are forever. So the question is, how do we make it more convenient for our customers? And then an idea like an ATM may come into play.
Yeah.
So when you truly think about what is the problem that we're solving for our customers?
In business, we see like really prominent like professionals and organizations, mature organizations, that push out products or services and they just flop. Like they do absolutely terrible dumpster fire, whatever, right? We're like, okay, but like you're a million, trillion, billion-dollar like business, right? Like how did that happen?
Uh, uh, Likely because they didn't have a good handle on the problem they were solving. So when a product is not accepted and consumers are saying, "I don't need that," because it doesn't solve a problem that they have.
Yeah.
And there's been uh, plenty of failed products out there, or plenty of products or companies that went out of business because they didn't anticipate uh, new ideas to solve problems. Like
Mm.
Blockbuster went out of business because Netflix completely ate their breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Uh, because Blockbuster decided, no, no, people will still come to a store and pick a DVD or whatever to go home. And Netflix said, there's got to be a faster way to get
Hmm.
content to people. And so they did do like mail. When they first started, they were mailing DVDs, but as streaming got more powerful, Netflix saw it before anybody else did.
That's always been a really interesting thing to me of like how companies, I mean, obviously like there's a bunch of like survivorship bias like on this, but there's a huge amount of companies that like it's almost like being right place at the right time, right? Like they were already building in a certain way that when the technological it became technologically viable, right?
Yes.
And technology finally came up to that point that they like hopped on it, and they were able to like go full steam ahead on that idea, right? Um, how would you say maybe like scaling it down to like maybe just students or like a startup or whatever, right? How does one build in a way, even though small, in a way that like they can hop on trends in a timely manner?
So the first thing is to pay attention to trends that are happening, and then if it's a small organization, so that they don't miss the trend, just put something out there and see if it sticks, and
Mm.
then recalibrate where necessary, uh, because that may be an example of it's a trend. You don't want to miss the opportunity versus potential competitors. So just put something out there and improve it as you're going along. What's that classic line? You're flying the airplane as you're building it.
Yes. If you enjoyed this podcast and would like to hear more, please subscribe on your podcast platform of choice. For more insights and conversations, follow me on LinkedIn or visit my website, victoryyetti.ca. Until then, keep asking questions and dare to have dissenting ideas.